Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the DeepSEO Con webinar series. I'm Steve Grinzer, and my partner up there is Doc Sheldon. This week we have with us Kim Krause, who is one of the more accomplished people in the accessibility space. She's been doing this longer and better than anybody we know. And this issue has continued to come up, and it will always continue to come up because I think web developers don't get it, and that's a shame. And we're at a point now where web developers not getting it is going to start costing clients money
Right.
with lawsuits. So we're going to go ahead
Big
and
money.
take the lead and kind of start off with where we are now and what we should be doing. Kim?
Okay. Well, before we jump in, I just want to clarify that I left consulting because people will say, "Can I hire you?" And I left consulting last May to work for Bank Mobile Technologies, and which is what I wanted to do for like the longest time, so that it would give me a big leap forward into the back end and development for accessibility. And I think what people don't realize is that it's all mobile now, and that includes accessibility for mobile. So I wanted to be there for that, and now I'm there for that. And just in the past 6 months, I've learned a lot more, including the legal side as well as the more of the development side and what's missing. And but anyway, just kind of wanted to circle back
Sure.
there before we move forward. I still have my two websites, Creative Vision Web Consulting, just because it has a big fancy thing at the top saying no longer for hire, but I keep it there just
Right.
in case. And because, that's kind of where I've lived for a while. And I also have the usersouthere.com, which I kind of use that as my own stockpile of resources and stuff that I refer to and send like the developers at work and stuff. The industry is and has exploded. And I don't know if that's lawsuit driven. I might be part of what's happening. The other is that with the pandemic, people are home. And I mean, like, everybody's at home. And that includes disabled people, non-disabled people who might have had something else going on and are really happy to be working from home. Like, if you have diabetes or your eyesight's starting to go, you're getting older, whatever, and you can still do your job from home. Sometimes accessibility affects that too. Just using myself as an example. Like, I don't have my super duper glasses on, and I don't have my magnification text on, and all the things that I wouldn't want to do if I was sitting right next door in an office with a 20-something-year-old, So, but accessibility, I think, is misunderstood. And that's another reason why we're always playing catch up, because we don't even know who we're developing for. So we just saw, in a discussion on Facebook talking about manual testing versus automation. And that comes up every day, no matter where I go. Can you automate this, or do you have to manually do this? And to which I'm going to say both. Manual testing, automation is the foundation, and there are more and more tools for that. And just hit the news yesterday, Carl Groves, who was the inventor of Tenon and Mortise, I'm sorry. Matisse was a horse I had. But Tenon and Mortise are automated accessibility tools. And Carl sold Tenon to Level Access. And Level Access already has accessibility software and tools and a really nice setup. So they've combined resources. We're probably going to see a lot more of that. And that just enables more access to enterprise level automation. Why is that important? Because we're developing at the enterprise level now. It's not just WordPress, it's native apps and hybrid apps and code that I don't understand, but that's my world now. And can you automate that? Not always. It depends on how it's coded in the back end. Can you use it as a baseline, the automation, even like Lighthouse? Yes. It's an Axe, I love Axe, which is an extension that can in the browser, and it does the first pass, and the better tools will tell you where the error is, how many times that error appears on the page, how to fix it, and if you're lucky, it'll link to the WCAG guideline with the example code. That's free, easy to find, and these tools like Axe are free, which leads me into the other thing is everybody's like, oh, it's hard to learn. It's going to take me years. It's going to cost a lot of money. I didn't have to pay for anything until I went for certification, and then it cost me something. But for the first 20 years as I was learning this, I just went online and learned it. So accessibility is great if you want to learn it and you have the passion to learn what you need to learn. The
Right.
finer points are definitely with the certification and better testing. But I just wanted to kind of clear that up. It's like people will say, oh, it's so hard. It doesn't have to be.
Well,
if you're just starting out.
if I could ask something, Kim, what I have been assuming these tools like Axe and Wave are for is to find issues, but I have yet to find any tool that will fix those issues. They'll point them out to me, and they might point me to the resource that'll help me fix them, but that's going to be a manual process at that point. Is that fairly accurate?
Yeah, none of those tools will fix them for you. And that's why you have to understand what the guideline is telling you, and that's not always easy either.
Yeah.
Perfect example is touch targets. If you read the information about touch targets, you'll completely lose your mind. There's a lot of examples and a lot of guidelines. And is it 44 pixels? Is it 40 pixels? Is it this? Is it that? And if it's that, how do you make it so? And what's the focus state? All that stuff. It's like you said, it will tell you and what the issue is, and it will point you to the guideline, and it will even give you examples for help if you look hard enough in the WCAG guidelines, but it will not fix it for you. You've got to do that. And that's easier said than done, even with WordPress. And for any, like WordPress, they try to help you. And it's easier with the web, but if you get into like native app development and custom code, that introduces a whole new set of things that you have to think about.
Sure.
I got a lot of pushback on that. Oh, you're not a developer. That's true. But I also have to help them, and I have to guide them to where the solution might be, depending on what issue that we're facing.
Well, I know I ran Axe on one of our sites this morning, just before this, and it did a nice job of pointing out issues and offering me the WCAG references on a number of them. But like you say, I mean, you feel like you need to go back to school when you start trying to interpret some of those guidelines.
Right. And it's, color contrast, it sounds so easy, but then somebody's going to say, well, what level must your color contrast to? Is it WCAG A, AA, or AAA? you won't believe how many hours I spend just discussing what level color contrast should be met. And I strongly recommend getting that in writing and written down in requirements so that there isn't ever any question as to what level you are coding for and testing for. That's actually a hard-earned lesson. Requirements are really important to get down when talking about anybody about what you are promising. The manual testing, like the manual keyboard testing, that can be automated for web and following the DOM with some software. But there and again, if something is missed in that navigation as it's going through or as you're tabbing through, how do you fix that?
Well, that's something else that I have noticed is looking at different tools on the contrast issues. I'll have one tool will say, yep, you're fine. And another tool will say, nope, you're failed. And for the same standard level, it's like I'm going for AA. One says you're good, one says you're failing. And who do you believe?
Right. Yeah, we actually do compare the two. And sometimes it's just a really fine difference, that foreground and background color testing. And interestingly enough, I will even take the darn thing outside and in the sunlight, because even if it passes the color contrast test, if Kim, with her really messed up eyesight in the sunny day, still can't read it, we have a problem. And if it's going to affect me, it's going to affect a lot of other people. And which leads me to my other testing tip is go outside and play with your toy. Whatever it is that you're developing. I always say developers never get to play with whatever it is that they're creating. They have this set of requirements or in this little cube and they're hunched down and they're in the code, but they don't get to take it out and experiment with it and use it in real life scenarios. And with accessibility, usability, all that, the human experience comes into play. And we don't understand who we are developing for until we actually go out and test what we're building and what we're creating.
We look at a lot of this stuff at different levels. I know you're working at enterprise level stuff right now. But what are we supposed to be looking at for the smaller guys, the mom and pops, the little brick and mortars, who really don't have the budget to barely have a website, let alone all the testing and to make sure they're compliant? And what kind of exposure are they looking at if they're not?
Yeah, they, for a really long time, that was my bread and butter. The smaller websites. And in my mind, they deserved this equal chance, equal access, the same as everybody else. And there and again, there are tools and websites and themes that are ready for them. There's even, packages out there like I used to say, I would never use Wix or some of the other ones. But you know what? If that gets your foot in the door, start there. And more, they are becoming accessible and they're coming out with accessible themes. My daughter's getting married and I thought this was really cool. She found this package deal or this, I never even went and found out who the company is, so I have to find out who they were, but they give you the website, they mail out the invitations, save the date, the events, all that stuff in one place. The website's beautiful. I didn't even check to see if it was accessible. I should have because, of who I am and what I do, but I was so happy that it gave her independence. And she doesn't have any money. So, and they're getting married, but there are places where they can at least get started. And lot of them that I worked with just put an accessibility statement at the bottom saying, I'm doing my best. Here's why I know I'm not maybe accessible. If you have a problem, let me know. And then they can seek some help. But like I said, learning about it, the information's out there and it doesn't cost anything. And what I found was that sometimes people would say, can you point me in the right direction? And I would give them the direction to go and they would follow. And it didn't cost me anything. It didn't really cost them anything either. So you're on mute, Doc.
There we go. Sorry about that. I was in a Facebook discussion the other day, and it started out talking about GDPR and the fact that the Commission in Europe has been rather forgiving if the company was making an honest effort. They were in the process. They have not been beating people to death because they haven't met the letter of the law. They're looking at efforts in March to see, that you're making an honest and productive effort. And somebody said, yeah, well, it's the same with accessibility. I said, no. First of all, there's two fronts to that battle. One is the enforcement and fining, but the other is the lawsuits. And that, in my eyes, from what I'm seeing, the lawsuits are the much greater threat. They seem to be increasing exponentially as the ambulance chasers procreate, and they're going out and they're actually looking for handicapped user, asking them to go to this site that the handicapped user has never heard of before, just so they can get them on the bill as one of the plaintiffs. And it's to me it's unforgivable, but it is what it is. So, I don't think that, when you're talking about a civil suit like that, I don't think that there's going to be any ability to depend upon honest effort getting you any kind of favor. It might with this judge, and your next judge might just chop your legs off. Does that ring with what you're seeing?
It depends on where you are in the district court. They're getting smarter. And more and more, what's happening is the judges are figuring out that there are specific law firms with serial filers. So it's the same law firm, the same people, and they're filing all these lawsuits, and they're not even actually disabled. They haven't even used the website. They just kind of ran a tool and said, they're failing. We're going to slap them with the lawsuit. So there's more across, at least in the US, they know who to look for, and the judges are like, we're not. And there's actually, I think some states are starting to like push back legally against this.
Good.
Where the lawsuits are increasing is with the overlays, because an overlay takes away the control of the user. And it's like and I'm sure we've talked about this, but there's actually another case that just went through in Western Pennsylvania against a company using an overlay. And I think Rite Aid's gotten some trouble too. What's happening is the National Association for the Blind is saying overlays are discrimination. They take away our control and our ability to use a website per the way we have our settings set up. And therefore, you can't believe all the hype. Like an overlay company will say, if you use our overlay, you will never be sued. And that's baloney. That's actually one of the leading causes right now.
There was somebody in that discussion who is supposedly an attorney who specializes in usability, accessibility issues and lawsuits, that was saying, as long as you have that disclaimer at the bottom of your homepage that you're not meeting the standards, but here's those places that we're deficient, you're covered. I said, what school did you go to?
Right. No, there's no legal protection from an accessibility statement ever, and I doubt there ever will be. All that does is says it just shows transparency, and it knows that you're making an effort. But the one thing you can never do is say, well, I promised to do such and such by such and such a date, because they will circle around and make sure that you did it. And if you didn't, boom. But it just, there's nothing wrong with making an effort and showing that you care, but you have to mean it. And people will know when you're not. The other thing is that if you are facing a lawsuit, the judge is going to make you present yourself or defend yourself by hiring an accessibility, usually a certified accessibility specialist, and that's going to cost you some money. So there is no reason to cut corners and not put in the effort. But I don't think that small mom and pops are a target as much as like Hilton has an overlay, or they did have an overlay. Like some of the bigger corporations where you're going to make some money if you win the lawsuit. Why in the world they would ever allow a script, I don't get it. Because they can afford to pay somebody to actually do the accessibility for them.
So all right, let's take an example for us is we're currently working with a company called Duda that does web platforms. Very good company. I like the websites they build. But they also offer overlays as part of their internal, here's an app, here's an overlay, boom, you're good. What would be an approach for somebody like us to come to them and say, hey, look, that's really neat that you've done this, but it's not right. How do we, if you were going to approach them and say, how do we fix this so we don't need the overlays? I'm perfectly fine with firing up a conversation with them and shaking them because, we all know some of the people who are there now. But
I can send you the lawsuits. There's actually one fairly recent that just came out, and I have the whole case, and that's an overlay one. Okay. And there's more, and there's also a couple of lawyers who specialize in it. So if you want, we can back that up with factual information, not fluff. Everybody's going to want, well, so prove it to me that that we will get sued. Well, okay, there's a whole lot of cases, and it's growing.
Yeah, we make an effort with our company to make it as accessible as we can out of the box. And I know we're not always 100% successful. It is hard, but at least we know when we try. The problem it starts to happen when we start handing it off to the client, and if the client if the tools aren't built for the client, so it's automatic. Like in WordPress, it would be we've actually started to build a plugin that forces you to add the different attributes to an image before you can save it to the website. Where, right now they're optional. And it would be so easy for WordPress automatic to just put in a switch. It says, you can't save this without these attributes. And now you have to make a conscious choice to fill them with garbage because you can't not fill them. You know what I'm saying? Because most people, especially clients, are not going to, when you upload an image, they're not going to type in the alt attributes in the title.
They're not even going to remember it.
They're just going to hit save and place, and then place it at full size instead of thumbnail and all the bad things that they do. And the fact that these larger companies aren't being more proactive with this, is it going to take somebody suing Automatic to make this happen? Because they are, in the end, they're the creator of the platform.
Right. And it might. I hate to say that. In my mind, that's a hard one. I get lazy too. But, Medium, you're entering your alt text when you put in an image in Medium. Twitter, they're like, put the alt text in there. When I was playing with PowerPoint, it figured out what the image was and put it in. It actually started to figure out, and I thought, wow, that's really cool. So yes, we can be lazy for a little while longer, but eventually that stuff is going to happen automatically. And sometimes I will throw the SEO card out and say, well, okay, the alt text is a really good place to enter some keywords or at least fortify your page's SEO. And they're like, oh, okay, I can do that now. So sometimes you have to give them another reason other than accessibility. The other thing is that people will say, well, I'm not blind. And then that leads into a whole nother discussion that accessibility isn't just for blind people.
Right.
It's way, way, way more than that.
And I remember the conversations we had in the 90s when we first started building websites. And even back then, people talked about accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer always was, how is a blind person going to use the internet?
Right. Right.
Well, now they can.
Right. And now they can. Did you see the Netflix show, The Dark, whatever it is, with the blind? She's really cool. And of course, I'm not going to remember the name of it right now, but she actually she's an actress pretending to be a blind person, but she's using assistive tech with her cell phone to get around and get her out of some emergency situations and all kinds of really neat things. And it's another step forward in communicating to people that tech is out there. I was just watching something. What the heck was I seeing? Trust me, I see so much stuff every day. What we're talking about with WordPress and Duda and themes and all that stuff, we are so behind the eight ball with what's being developed out there as far as the ability to include more and more people in the digital space with all kinds of different ways of accessing the web, things that we haven't even dreamed of. And that one example that you sent me with the animation that the developer was doing, he wasn't wrong to want to try to help. He was giving a visual example, and it was really cool. And for people like me who need that visual, I'm always bugging people, draw me a picture. I don't understand what you're trying to tell me until you show me. Give me the visual. That's how a lot of us process. Mm-hmm. And he was doing that. What he didn't understand was that screen reader users will never see it. It had no captions and it was animated. And like there was a whole subset of people who would never see what he was trying to do. He was helping. He was trying to help and offer an assist. But
well, and to backfill this a little bit for some people who he was talking specifically about feature listing pages for products, if you've got different levels of products, and using a mouse over like a tooltip where you moused over the feature, and not only did it, and instead of just giving you a little text blurb of this is what the feature is, it was actually an animated GIF showing you the feature, and it was very cool.
That was brilliant, I thought.
But it creates more accessibility issues.
It creates a whole other set of issues that, and I was really surprised that somebody actually even asked in that thread, how is this for accessibility? And every single answer just screamed wrong.
Yeah.
All the answers were, as long as you include alt text, you're fine. But in mobile, that doesn't work because you don't have a hover in mobile. So it has to be a click. And then that adds a whole nother level of issues with accessibility because now you've got 80 clicks in the middle of a page. And how do you tab through that or cycle through it as somebody using a screen reader? Is that creating a nightmare on the other side?
Right.
Are we, I wonder if we're not getting to the point where we're almost back to where we were in the early days where you're coding for specific browsers, where you're developing websites for specific people because of these issues, because there's so many cool things that we can do that are amazing for 85% of the people out there.
Right.
Well, that brings up another question. Kim, you remember back when our mobile sites were MDOT rather than being responsive, okay? What is the feasibility of having your standard, normal perception and site, and then if you have vision, follow this link. If you have various issues, different levels of site, is that even a legal solution, or does that create more vulnerability by not making the primary site usable for everybody?
it's discrimination. Anytime you make somebody work harder than their neighbor that doesn't have a disability, you've automatically discriminated against them. And that's like the basic rule of thumb. And it took me a long time before I really got that through all of my entire gene pool. It's like, wait a minute, I see what's happening there. And it happens everywhere. Like somebody just sent out a reminder not to put Christmas decorations on handrails. We all freaking do that. But for somebody in a wheelchair or who has trouble walking or whatever, that presents a hurdle. You know what I mean? We don't think like that. We're always, I mean, that's crazy. The other thing is airports or airlines that promise to have a wheelchair, and you get there and they've lost them, or there isn't anything available, or whatever. It's you can scream and yell, but that's discrimination. They need to always be ready for somebody who needs the additional extra.
We just experienced. I'm sorry. We just experienced something like this today. My wife blew out her knee yesterday, and she is on crutches and can hardly move.
Yep.
And you see the world so much differently in just that instant. And today we went to the VA clinic because she's injured. She's military. We go to the VA clinic, and she's ahead of me because she's doing pretty decent on the crutches. And I was getting stuff out of the car, and there's a button on the wall that says, open the doors. When you push that button, those doors open, and you're now on the wrong side of those doors because the button's on the side of the door. The door's open, and you can't get back far enough without going off the curb to get through the doors that are open.
Yep.
And there's no ramp there, and she's just like standing on the other side of the door, like, this makes no sense.
Yeah.
But legally, they've actually covered themselves because it's all there. It's just set up backwards.
Right.
And that made me think of what we're talking about tonight and everything else that's going on.
Right.
And I would love to see we start getting more developers getting that beat into their brains. This needs to be just as important on your to-do list as the hero image you're going to put your big splash image at the top of the page. It's got to be just as important as your navigation. If it's baked in at the basic level of the website, then you don't have to go back and fix it, and you don't have to deal with it.
Right. Hey, Doc.
Just like SEO, it's best done at the front end because it's a whole lot more work to try to rework stuff.
Right. And the reason why we don't have MDOTs anymore or any of the other weird ideas is it's universal design, and universal design is inclusive. Anybody can use it, and more creative people are thinking like that. Like, how do I solve a problem so that anybody can use it? Like, even those ramps on sidewalks that they, like the built-in ones, that was for handicapped people kind of initially. Well, we're all using that stuff. We love it. And I mean, there's endless examples of how something was created for somebody with a disability, and we're all using it.
Right.
And
and that was we stopped at Taco Bell, and the ramp is in front of the doors where it belongs. The problem is from the parking lot, you have to walk out to the middle of the parking lot, walk behind all of the cars before you can get to the spot where the ramp is, because there was only the one ramp. There's no multiple ramps scattered throughout or whatever. It's just, it's amazing that, from an able-bodied perspective, even though when I take my glasses off, the whole screen just vanished. You don't think about it and how it affects the people who don't have the same level of ability as you. And one of the things Doc and I decided to do with this webinar series, every single video is going to come with a full transcript.
Oh yeah.
And
if I promote it without having a transcript, my friends will have my head. Seriously. We're not going to look at that because, they're...
okay, sure, it's going to cost you $10 to have somebody do a good transcript. If you can't afford the $10 to do a good transcript, how else can you do anything else? I mean,
Yeah.
To me,
I
that's
hate
your marketing investment.
Yeah, I mean, and think about all the good SEO it does, because now Google's going to go to your page and go, nice video, but look at all this beautiful text.
Yeah.
And so, again, we're back to SEO and ulterior motives and other ways we can make this palatable to clients. And I think we need to start, from my perspective at least, we need to stop telling the clients they can have the $300 website.
Right.
Yeah.
You just can't. If you want and I just turned somebody to Wix yesterday. They're like, well, we don't have any money. We got $400 or $500 we can spend on a website. So we can't help you.
Right.
Go to Wix, go to Squarespace, go to one of these other builder websites that will handle all of that for you.
Right.
And DIY, because we're getting to the point where if you have to have a minimum budget to get in the door.
Yeah, and I've been even
sucks,
saying that it's more and more expensive to have a website. It's not, even from hosting and building it. It's a different world, and it not just for accessibility, but just expenses are going up everywhere, and I think that's just the nature of the beast.
Yes, I agree. I'm looking at my notes here. That we've been through most everything that I had on my notes. I would like to, if you're up for it, make this a reasonably regular show that we do, because it's important. I'd like to, dig a little deeper into other areas that we can all do better in as developers and as marketers to be more inclusive and make sure that we, provide a better experience. Because, so we have to give up a couple of little flashy things once in a while. I'm okay with that. Flash itself wasn't incredibly accessible for anything, but everybody did it because it was awesome. We learned that it was only good for, a couple of things, and after that, it quickly lost its value.
And there are workarounds for everything. Because I do more mobile work now, mobile apps, and like something like a modal, SEO has its own issues with them, but and tooltips. But what people don't realize is you go to all that effort to put up a tool tip or a modal, and screen readers don't even know it's there. So all that help and all that information, that it's completely invisible to anybody who's listening, and it's not just blind people who are listening. I'm having stuff read to me all the time so that I can multitask. And that's the other thing people don't think about, is we're getting better and better at the ability to do two things at once.
Well, we need to reach out to StreamYard, Doc, because even here on this platform we're using right now for this show, with Doc having his resolution set where he has his set and his screen at 125%, when he clicks the share his screen button, the button that actually says share is down off the bottom of the screen, and there is no way to bring it somewhere he can see it.
You can't zoom out. It won't change. So that modal just is locked out of my vision range.
Is that the viewport? That might be a viewport setting in your header.
I haven't looked at the code on the page. Quite possibly so.
But
it is an accessibility issue,
Right. And the rule of thumb, since we're on that, is you should be able to expand or magnify up to 200% without losing the integrity of the page. That's the guideline. And there's a viewport that you can put in the header, up where the title and the meta and all that stuff goes. And most people either turn it off or they say, no, you're not allowed to magnify. And if you can't magnify, then that button's just going to be in your face. And
that's another violation.
Yeah.
It comes to mind, I can imagine an instance down the road where somebody has a small business site up, they get hammered in a lawsuit, and maybe they get taken for $100,000 that they can find a way, but they can't afford to lose. Now they just paid $12,000 to some developer to build them this website, and they say, I'm going to get at least $50,000 of this back now because I'm going to go sue my developer. So at some point in time, there's likely, I think, there's likely to become some downstream vulnerability to developers, possibly, potentially even hosts that allow certain functions that obviate accessibility.
Maybe, except that WCAG is not law.
No.
They're all guidelines. So if somebody says, well, I'm going to, you've got to pay fines and you've broken all these rules, we're in a wiggle room space there, because, like I said, it's the only time anything is legally binding is depending on the country, because like Canada and UK, yeah, they enforce, and there's a couple others, and Section 508.govs and .edu.
Discrimination. Yeah.
Right, but your mom and pop, and their web designer and developer, people have asked me that before, and I said they would be, well, first of all, you're an LLC, and but anyway, you're protected. But no, you're not breaking the law just because that button is in their face and it's not going away. That is not a law. And if somebody can't hear something, again, you're not breaking a law. You're just being a pain in the ass. So, it's.
I'm glad that's not illegal.
Yeah, boy, that would take a lot of fun out of living, wouldn't it, Steve?
It would make my day very boring.
Yeah, I think what sets people apart are those who care and those who don't. And some people are like, why do you care so much about accessibility? You're perfectly fine. To me, it was tied in with usability. It always has been about the user experience and caring about that. And it goes into universal design and inclusive design. And I just think it's part of being human is you care about what it is that you're delivering. But if you make promises that you can't keep, like some, companies do, then yeah, go after them. And some people are with the overlays and stuff.
So, okay. So again, we're still no overlays. Overlays are bad.
Yeah, overlays are bad.
Overlays are bad.
And there's some
right.
plugins too. Like some of the plugins and the widgets, there and again, I stopped using them because they take away. The example I use, or the analogy is, imagine you walk into a store and you have to rearrange every aisle to, everything comes down to your level, you widen the aisles, all the things that you have to do, increase the size of the text on Captain Crunch, all that stuff before you can even purchase anything. That's what these widgets do. And most people have their settings, especially on mobile, iOS and Android, their settings are already done by them. They made it so that they can walk through the store. And the moment you take away and override their settings, that's a problem. That's where the issues are.
I can see that issue because I run my phone, not quite in dark mode, but I have the light turned way down because the bright light bothers me, gives me headaches. And I can tell when an app has taken control of that.
Right.
Because as soon as it fires up, it's like, pow, right in your face. And it's like, no, that's not what I want.
Right.
You mean kind of like how TV commercials automatically jump volume 35% above what your setting was during the commercial?
Yeah.
No, that's really weird that they do that, but yeah.
Been doing that for 50 years that I know of.
Yeah.
I would have thought that a smart TV manufacturer would have just made a volume control that sets a max, and no matter how loud the program is, it never gets above this point.
That would not be a difficult circuit, no.
No, it would not be difficult to do, yet none of them seem to have done it. So, well, Kim, we're on about 45 minutes here. I want to give you a minute or two if you wanted to talk about anything you've got going on or what's going on with where you're at to share with people to know and kind of, what's going on in your world that's important.
I'm torturing everybody where I work. Yes, at Bank Mobile, I'm the formerly known as Bank Mobile, and now it's BMTX. But anyway, I'm considered the SME, which is really cool. But like I know the accessibility, and I get to work with the developers, and it was really cool when it was just the web. But now that I'm working on a hybrid app, and that's where it's coded to work for iOS and Android, and that's a whole new world for me. And it's fun, it's challenging. The devs are like, what do we do? And I'm like, I don't know. So, I'm not a developer. But it's the people who want to learn and want to change the culture, both there and anywhere, that's really, really rewarding. And there's more of that. Like back in the 90s, when I was in UX and QA testing, the thing was we want to be like Amazon, and everybody would copy Amazon. Amazon has so many accessibility people now, it's not even funny, and they're hiring more. They're 20 years ahead of everybody else. And I've even kind of listened with screen readers to see what they're up to, and they're not perfect, but there's a lot of stuff that we've got that we still can learn. And like how things are pronounced, like the word live is pronounced live. I mean, all kinds of stuff. So it's, to me, that's the fun part, is every single day there's another challenge with accessibility and learning what it's like to listen to the world versus what it's like to interact as a marketer and an SEO and its usability and visually with everything. The other thing that I wanted to say was that Search Engine Journal has changed my article writing for 2022. I used to be every other month. Now I'm writing about accessibility every month.
Yeah, great.
So that's, and if that doesn't tell you that accessibility and marketing and SEO and usability is getting important, I don't know what does. So,
Awesome.
yeah. So I'm really happy to see that there's more than 5 of us who care.
Well, and it's where it's going to have to be. I mean, it's like everything else in our industry. We are a young industry even now.
Yeah.
And we have to grow up, and the world has been growing up whether we will or not. So if you want to continue in this industry, you at least have to have a passing knowledge of what's going on at all points. You can tunnel in and be specific about one thing, but you still have to have your fingers in a little bit of everything to be really good at your job.
Right.
And
yeah. I'm always reading everything. That's why I started the user is out there, because I thought, where do I put this stuff? Because I can't remember it all.
Right.
And there's some really good information out there.
Outstanding. Well, Kim, thank you very much, as always.
Great.
Learn a
Very
lot.
interesting as always, yeah.
And,
Thank you for inviting me.
And we'll look forward. Maybe we can bring in a couple of your coworkers or something on the next one. If they're, so we can get more people arguing with each other is always good.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Well, it would be an interesting exercise to have a developer who has started getting his feet wet, working with these aspects, and hear their point of view, because it's easy to tell the dev, okay, this has to do that. It's not always that easy for them to just, push a button and make it happen. They might have to go through 1,300 lines of code and make 72 changes to make that one thing happen. Mm-hmm. So I think some understanding on both sides of the aisle is going to be important too.
Right. And the other thing is that there's some accessibility people that are like, it's got to be done this way and no other way, and I'm not going to budge. And I've never operated that way. And so I'm just like, okay, well, let's find a solution and put like an H1 tag. Yeah, you really kind of only want one, but there are instances where more than one is necessary. And a lot of pages don't have one at all. So
great.
All right. I know people who fight about it. It's like, no.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much, Kim. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll see everybody here on our next show.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.